Greetings, comrades. I am Beinn Irbhinn, and I am the voice of Scottish socialism in Inverclyde. Now, before I dive into this broadcast proper, I want to take a few moments just to correct a misconception that has been doing the rounds. It is in regards to an extremely important motion that was recently passed at our conference. The conference at St Augustine United Church in Edinburgh was extremely well attended. In fact, by the time comrades from Inverclyde branch got there, there was only standing room left. With roughly 2,500 new members having signed up to the party since the referendum, including 50 in Inverclyde, we will need to start using bigger venues in future. Possibly the most significant piece of news to come out of this year's conference was the commitment of the SSP to push ahead with plans to form a Yes Alliance to contest the 2015 Westminster elections. We are now officially the first of the Yes parties to adopt this position, and we wait to see if the Greens and SNP will also adopt such a position. Judging by the recent Yes meeting in Gourock and at Crawfordspurn, it is clear that a majority of SNP members wish their party to follow our lead. Will the SNP leadership acknowledge the wishes of their members? I hope so, but this is where the misconception comes in, and I want to quickly set it right. Some SNP members have been telling people that the SSP have voted to campaign for the SNP for the Westminster elections. Let me be clear, neither at local nor national level will we campaign for the SNP. There are just too many policies that party stands for that we can never accept. What we will do is campaign for independence, which is why the Yes Alliance is so important. Now, it may end up being the case that in Inverclyde the Yes Alliance candidate comes from the SNP ranks. If so, then so be it, but that is the closest we will ever get to campaigning for the SNP. Now, of course, this is just a simple misconception, and it's far from the worst we could mention. In fact, it's parties like UKIP, not the SNP, who are fundamentally incapable of understanding political ideas. Several UKIP politicians and activists have repeatedly made claims that the country is being run by Marxists, and put all the blame for all the problems in the UK onto our supposed communist overlords. What makes this delusion so remarkable is the fact that for 35 long years the UK has actually been run by governments that have rigidly adhered to the right-wing economic ideology of neoliberalism, ever since Margaret Thatcher introduced it to British politics in 1979. Neoliberalism is a phrase you will hear us use a lot. For those not familiar with it, it is basically an extreme version of capitalism. The Bible of traditional capitalists was Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. For Thatcher and her ilk, the Bible became Robert Nozick's Anarchy, State and Utopia, which was an argument for the elimination of government in favour of capitalist markets. This is the same ideology adhered to by Major, Blair, Brown and Cameron. Nigel Farage also claims to be keeping the flames of Thatcherism alive, and subscribes to the same ideology. So it is strange to say the least that UKIPers believe themselves to be anti-establishment. They're following the same ideology that the establishment has been following for the last 35 years. You can't get much more pro-establishment than that. That some people are so hopelessly confused that they believe people like Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair and David Cameron have been our Marxist overlords is worrying stuff. Have the British people become so dumbed down that they actually believe this ludicrous, politically illiterate rubbish? Well, apparently the ones in UKIP have. That's not to suggest that anyone who disagrees with the Scottish Socialist Party is an idiot. We're always more than keen to engage in sensible debate with people from across the political spectrum. One question we were posed by a listener was this: due to the preclusion of exchange for goods of higher order, what is the basis for state officials directing the alternative applications of the factors of production towards thousands of different and changing consumer needs and wants of different urgencies in the least cost manner for society at large? While this question is interesting, it fundamentally misunderstands the difference between capitalism and socialism. The questioner makes the mistake of thinking that socialism means the absence of buying and selling, and that instead the government distributes goods according to its own criteria. In a socialist Scotland, however, people will still go to the shops and buy stuff, much the same as they do now. Socialism is at heart an economic theory of ownership. It's a theory about the balance between public ownership and private ownership. At one end of the scale, communists believe in 100% public ownership and absolutely no private ownership. At the other end of the scale, neoliberals such as Thatcher and Farage believe in 100% private ownership and no public ownership. Socialism is somewhere in the middle. Different socialists believe in different ratios of public to private ownership. At the Scottish Socialist Party, we believe in a market economy, but not a market society. For us, society involves all the things people have a human right to. So there are certain areas that private ownership should be kept out of, such as healthcare, law and order, education, public transport, social housing and so on. Basically the things society needs to function should be under public ownership, the things that can be referred to as needs. Power companies should be in public ownership, as society has a need for gas and electricity to function properly, while people also have a human right to be able to keep their homes warm in the winter. That is just one example of the areas that need to be kept or brought into public democratic ownership. On the other hand, the wants, such as the mobile phones, the brand name clothes, the gadgets, and so on, they are the realm of private companies. We want our country's economy and private companies to do well. We want them to be profitable, but we also want them to contribute to maintaining society by paying their fair share of taxes. Now, some socialists may get uncomfortable with me talking about a thriving economy and about profitable private companies. I strongly believe, however, that as socialists we should not be scared of talking about a market economy. We should be clear though that we are talking about a socially orientated market economy. The term market economy should not be understood in any way that is contrary to socialist ideals, and should definitely not be confused with capitalist ideas of a free market. Although we should accept one truth that the capitalists got right, that competition is one of the most important aspects of economic justice. As opposed to the capitalists' understanding of this truth, however, we use competition to empower the workers, not to forcibly reduce their wages and living conditions. Socialism, so understood, essentially empowers people to engage in business and stimulates private initiative in business activities. It allows workers to use their skills to take control of their own labour, which will result in more small businesses and self-employed workers. Acting most fiercely against this competition today, against the fair rules of the game, is the government in alliance with the multinationals who control our resources. Public interest should prevail over the interests of the capitalists. If capitalists ignore the social consequences of their activities, then they have no right to continue in those activities. The SSP does not accept the rule of unbridled market forces and will instead redistribute power over the market from the capitalists to civil society and the state. By implementing this socialism, we will strengthen the institutions of civil society that can become a real force, as opposed to excessive government intervention and the unlimited power of the free market. This is what I mean when I say that we are for a market economy, but not a market society. The spread of market relations outside of the economy destroys the moral atmosphere in society and hardens people. There can be no market between the people and the government. As to the balance between public and private ownership, we also embrace a variety of forms of ownership. Any form of property ownership, if law-abiding, has a right to exist. By socialism we do not mean the elimination of private property, but political regulation of property rights and the establishment of state controls over ownership, disposal and use of property. Private property is only to be abolished and replaced with common ownership by the people in the spheres of natural resources, industries of national importance, industries that provide the needs of a society and the cultural heritage of the country. Socialism in Scotland is now inseparably connected with democracy and can only be developed by relying on the democratic process. The Scottish Socialist Party places particular importance on consolidating all forms of participatory democracy so that the working classes have the opportunity to influence the decision-making process, to take part in state affairs, so to speak. A true representative democracy is a participatory democracy. Our socialism promotes the development of all levels of government and increases the participation of regional and local authorities in solving the pressing problems of life. Our socialism gives impetus to the development of civil society institutions and promotes community-based initiatives that form a proactive stance of the people to protect their interests. In this way, our socialism will be developed in close cooperation with other left-wing parties and trade unions. Our policies are carefully thought out and offer a realistic path for Scotland to take in the future as a way of establishing the country as one of the leading countries in the world, a country that acts as a beacon to other progressive people around the world. Every great country should have great goals. This socialism of the SSP, socialism for the 21st century, both in theory and in practice, is able to respond to real threats and challenges posed to Scotland in our modern age. Now, to move away from the political theory and focus on current real-life issues, let's take a closer look at one of these real threats faced by the working class in Scotland today. We're going to take a closer look at austerity. For this part of the broadcast, I'm thankful to Comrade Gerry Gallacher, an SSP member from Port Glasgow, for producing a quality discussion of the topic. I will relay to you Gerry's work now. So Gerry says, OK, we all know that the government are in deep perpetual crisis. I mean crisis of the financial kind. The word bandied about at present is the deficit. It basically means debt. A word more familiar to us all, but the debt the government talks about is in the trillions. And in the next parliamentary term, the government will attempt to claw back an amazing £25 billion of overspending, and that means cuts. These amounts of money are so astronomical that any average person could understandably struggle to figure out just how many zeros make up such figures. But why is it that under the present government, the poorest in society are the first to be selected to experience the cuts in the austerity agenda? At the recent Conservative Party conference, it was announced that welfare spending would be frozen for the next 4 years. This from a government who had earlier voted themselves an 11% pay rise. It is the unemployed who will bear the brunt, and those on low incomes, many of whom actually work and are considered gainfully employed, albeit on an inadequate minimum wage of £6.50 per hour. A figure arrived at tentatively and in no way representative of any actual ambition to make the life experience of workers bearable, never mind comfortable. The Scottish Socialist Party advocate a living wage of £10 per hour. Unemployed people are increasingly under pressure, a pressure that has also been evident amongst Job Centre Plus staff. The helplessness of Job Centre advisors under pressure to increase sanctions is clear, as the government have dithered in bringing into effect yet another system, this time universal credits. Leaked documents this summer showed that ministers considered employment and support allowance, formerly known as incapacity benefit, to be one of the largest fiscal risks currently facing the government. They also targeted claimants moving off job seekers allowance onto ESA. They are considering cutting the differential paid to ESA claimants. They currently get £28.75 more per week than job seekers allowance, but the documents show plans have been discussed to cut that to just 50p more than GSA. People receiving GSA who are aged 25 or over currently get £72.40 per week. Employment and support allowance is paid to approximately 2 million people over the UK. Claimants have to undergo a work capability assessment to determine whether they are eligible and at what level. 1 in 4 people are in poverty in Scotland. Included in that are 250,000 children, and 1 in 9 of these children are said to be in extreme poverty. Unemployment and low wages are at the heart of poverty. At a local level, there are 3,600 unemployed people in Inverclyde, 9% of the working age population. 20% of workers in Inverclyde earn less than £7 an hour, compared to a national average of 19%. 10,000 children in Inverclyde live in households that are dependent on out-of-work benefits or child tax credit benefits. 28% of primary school pupils in Inverclyde are eligible for free school meals, compared to the national average of 20%. In Inverclyde schools, there is a 16% gap in attainment levels between the poorest pupils and their classmates. 15% of the poorest young people in Inverclyde become unemployed immediately after leaving school. 19% of the poorest young people in Inverclyde go to university, compared to an average of 37% across the local authority area. Whether the recipients of welfare are seen as a drain on society is probably not a question Ian Duncan Smith, David Freud, the Government Welfare Advisor, or Ethel McVeigh, Minister of State for Employment, would like to be asked directly. I question whether they are seen as human beings at all, as this real-life crisis plays out in what is said to be the 14th richest country in the world. In the Commons recently, as seen on YouTube, but of course kept off of TV, Tory MPs laughed and jeered as they were told how some hard-up shoppers were so desperate they fought to snap up discounted items in supermarkets. There have been arrests and prosecutions due to people stealing from supermarkets to feed themselves and their families. There have been scuffles in supermarkets as hard-pressed shoppers vie with one another to lay hands on reduced items. Who knows how these shoppers must feel to see their self-respect dwindle due to no fault of their own, but instead due to the mismanagement at the highest levels of power, while the electorate are continually taken for granted. The running mantra during the referendum campaign was that we are better together. This seems to fly in the face of vast swathes of the Scottish population who in short find it hard to make ends meet. And why do the sick and disabled get similar treatment and are among the first to be lined up against the wall when it comes to cutting back government spending? Sick people and people with disabilities now find themselves under attack more than ever. Richard Montoni is the boss of US firm Maximus, who will soon be carrying out the despised assessments for sickness and disability benefits when his firm takes over from Atos. This CEO received a salary package worth a staggering $5 million in 2013. The methods used by Atos to carry out work capability assessments have been criticised for how they interacted with people at a basic human level. Designed to strip benefits from sick or disabled people, it is expected Maximus will carry on this work with crude computer-based tests that have caused suffering, led to homelessness, ill health and tragically even suicides, as people with serious health conditions are found fit for work and left without enough money to eat or keep the heating on. This group being prepared and examined for work will suffer as the Department of Work and Pensions is proposing to cut £30 a week sickness benefits. These cuts could push people trying to recover from serious illness into debt. That's excellent stuff from Gerry, and it certainly captures a lot of people's fears regarding the austerity programme being imposed on us by Westminster. In response, we need to organise and we need to unite. Someone can't do everything, but everyone can do something. Come speak to us at the Scottish Socialist Party and find out what you can do. I've been Beinn Irbhinn. Until next time, power and peace to the people.